Yeah, I mean, that's it, guys. It does not have to be so crazy scary. It is a little time consuming at first, but it's going to save you time in the end, right? And I know right now you're probably reading all of these. I should have said all this before I flipped the slide. In fact, let's go back for a second. Okay, so I heard recently that the average employee spends an average of 2.5 hours a day looking up information, right? Does that blow your mind? So when you get to have employees, you're paying for them to look for stuff that if you had just created a workflow, created a file guide, a file naming guide, created a system, you're going to be saving money. You're going to be getting more done. And then next week when we start getting into automations, you're really going to save money because you don't have to pay, Trello too much. You don't have to pay Zapier or anything like you have to pay an employee. So we're setting the stage now for all this stuff to happen down the road. So it is easy, but it is tedious. I'll grant you that. But just hang in there, get it done, and now we'll go here. So start with the end in mind, always. Start with, okay, the goal is to fly from LA to New York. The goal is to get a blog post published. The goal is to submit a wholesale order. All examples I talked about on this presentation. Come up with a consistent file naming system. Again, I know exactly what my images are without looking at them. There is a difference between files that you use in your back end that like only your team and company is going to see, versus images that are going to find their way to be published. Those images, you want to actually describe them for SEO purposes. Their meta description and alternative text. But files that you use within your company, come up with a consistent naming system, use it over and over again to some degree. And again, I will upload mine and I'll do a quick little video so you can see what I mean. Get uber specific. The more specific, the better. Now, that being said, you don't have to get uber specific from the very, very beginning. You are going to go through a workflow. Like when you're creating a workflow, you're going to go through it several times before it's quote unquote done. And even when it's done, it's not done, but we'll get to that in a minute. Don't feel like in the first go round, it has to be perfect. It's not going to be. You're going to get out like the most important stuff first, and then you're going to go back and be like, oh wait, I forgot this. And then you're going to go back and be like, oh, I forgot this. And it's just going to evolve over time, right? And then when you have someone test it, they're going to come up with a hole that you didn't even know existed. So don't, done is better than perfect. Is that the phrase? Just start, because it is, if you're anything like me, you can get so caught up in the, like, it has to be perfect before I show it to anyone else. It's not going to work with workflows. Excuse me. All right, that being said, don't create monster workflows. Create modules and fit them together like puzzle pieces. You know what? I'm going to go back to a slide right here. Okay. See how this slide says new blog post? And then it says right here, and then you go through it, blah, 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 blah. And then at publish, whoa, start social workflow. That's what I mean. I didn't take this workflow and then build out the social workflow because, and here's why. If you find a hole in your workflow, you want to be able to just tweak that section. You don't want to have to like redo the whole thing, right? So if you just have kind of puzzle pieces that work off of each other, it's easier to isolate what's not working and fix it than it is when you have this giant monster workflow and there's a hole. It's like a strand of Christmas lights, kind of. If a bulb goes out, the whole strand breaks, right? So I don't know how to make the Christmas lights into the puzzle piece analogy, but sorry, y'all, there's a car right outside my door, and I think they're going to deliver some Amazon stuff, and that's always fun. I told y'all these videos are real. This is what you get in the beta group. You get me, unscripted, no makeup, looking at my Amazon orders. Okay, next, eliminate redundancies. This one, you know, it's not as common as like the knee-jerk reaction to create monster workflows or inconsistency in file naming. But sometimes you, accidentally make the same step a few times. Or like, well, wait a second. Why do I have this person print out a file, scan it, and then email it? Why don't I just have them scan it straight to email or whatever? That kind of stuff. Eliminate a step, eliminate a redundancy if it can be done quicker and easier. That makes sense. Test it, and then test it again, and then again. Each time you're going to probably come up with a way to do it better. If you get to the point where you're like, this is perfect, I don't need to change anything, good for you. Congrats, but it's not going to happen on the first try. Your first is your worst. I heard that yesterday too, and I'm like, that's good. It was in terms of email marketing, but I think it works for workflows too. And I kind of touched on this before, but know that your workflow is a living, breathing thing. It can change and it should change, because if it doesn't, it means your business is stagnant, right? If you're growing, you're going to have to change your workflow along with it. You hire a new person, they've got to fit into that workflow. Speaking of, client onboarding and employee onboarding are two fantastic ways to make sure you have your workflow set up. Those are really good workflows to start with. If you're service-based, you probably already kind of have a client onboarding, but get it out on paper and get it mapped out, because we're going to be able to dig in and automate some of that. And that's going to save you time, right? And same with employee onboarding. When, as solo entrepreneurs, we tend to get to the point where we're too busy to hire, or at least that's what the argument a lot of people say is, I just don't have time to train. Well, if you have a employee onboarding system already, and you've got your brand Bible already put together, and you've got all of your branding consistent, it's going to be so much easier to bring someone on, because even if you're like, hey, you're great, I love you, you're hired, I'm busy, they can kind of figure out their way through, the most basics of your business, even if they have to kind of wait until you have a little more time to really dig in. You could be like, hey, here's how I want all my files named. Can you go through and name them? It also gives them some tasks. Yeah, so that is another reason that workflows, that's another example of a really good way to use a workflow, is to quickly onboard an employee and quickly train them.